There we go! No more Japanese on mainland China. We have ourselves a massive army ready to take the fight anywhere we want to. We have massive stockpiles of equipment. Well, we could have massive stockpiles of equipment because we have 66 military factories churning out all the stuff we need. Artillery, fighters, infantry equipment. And to top it all off, we have another 50 civilian factories constantly building things for us at this point. We are the dragon awoken. China is ready to kick some ass and make sure the world knows where we are. But first, if you liked the video, hit that like button, consider subscribing for more of these guides, and let me know in the comments what countries or achievements you want to see next. Your support means a lot. Now, onto the guide. Hey folks, Bittersteel here, back with more Hearts of Iron 4. Today, we're gonna take China and turn it from a backwater into a global superpower and get ourselves some nice achievements along the way. Specifically, Awaken Angry and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Boom. Iron Man on, Historical on, and start the game. Now, at the start of the game, China suffers from a few crippling national spirits. We start out with the 9-power treaty, which locks us into free trade. This is bad because we will need all of our steel to fuel the dragon. We also suffer from ineffective bureaucracy. It's a 35% recruitable pop factor penalty. This is a nuisance, but in the grand scope of things, irrelevant. As China, we have more than enough men to send into the meat grinder. There's also incompetent officers, a 70% penalty to daily command power gain. Again, a nuisance, but nothing we can't deal with. There is a low inflation, small penalty to consumer goods factories and factory output. Nothing shocking here. It's something we can safely ignore for now. We'll deal with this as we go along the focus tree. And finally, the big one, army corruption. 30% mobilization speed penalty. Not really that important. But then, boom! A 50% penalty to both division attack and defense. This is what turns our already sorry excuse for an army into straight up garbage. This is why you'll see Japan wiping away the Chinese army in most AI campaigns. However, we will work through it. That's what we do. First up, research. We're going to rush straight for the Type 24. Yes, we will lose out on some production efficiency, but that will mostly recover by the time the war starts, and the extra defense and soft attack will help carry the day for us. Our second slot will be devoted to the Grand Battle Plan Doctrine. Why? So we can get trench warfare, which gives us another 10 entrenchment, and later on prepared defense, which will give us another 10% defense bonus and 10 extra organization. This will help us to really dig in against the Japanese onslaught, and we won't have to yield one step. Now, after we get these two, we will also be focusing on getting radio and support weapons 1 to help out with our subjugation of the warlords and the initial Japanese pushes. After that, we'll adjust to the situation as it develops, but good options include upgrading our fighters and tactical bombers, maybe some air doctrines because we will have a massive amount of air experience. Personally, I prefer to get strategic destruction in that case. But enough about research, we'll come back to that later. Production. 5 factories on guns. We'll need guns, a lot of guns, but not just guns. I'm gonna put 2 factories on interwar fighters, which will keep us in the air race with Japan. I'm gonna put 1 factory on interwar bombers for that sweet, sweet CAS action. And then 2 last factories are going to be anti-air. It's a good addition to our divisions for some more defense and soft attack for a small investment. We'll adjust this as we go, adding more things to the production line as we get more leeway, but for now all our excess factories go to infantry equipment. Now, to trade for these resources, pick trading partners that don't require convoys. France is an easy one, and once France falls, you can always switch over to Russia. By then you should have a land border with them, or a puppet that has a land border with them. Now, construction. We are going to be building land forts. Level 3 forts all along our Japanese border. With these forts in place, we will actually be able to hold the Japanese advance without having to take one step back. So 3 forts along this line. And even with our garbage units, we should be able to hold the Japanese there with some micromanagement. After that, we will put military factories in Shanghai, in Hunan, and this tiny province here, I believe Qingdao. It's pronounced. Don't shoot me, not Chinese. I'm trying, not great. Now, the army. Just take all of these units. And let's see, we can take 24 of these units. These are all our regular infantry divisions. Give them the best commander, and it's them sorted. Then we can take out the cavalry units, should be 5 of them, put them separately, and we have 28 garrison divisions left. We'll only need 24 to man the ports, so I'm gonna take these out, 4 of them out, leave us with 24 garrison units, also giving them a commander, and give a commander to the final army as well. I'll pick the infantry guy for this, even though they have cavalry in here, because I will switch out the cavalry once we've dealt with the warlords. This will be the basis on which we build our second regular infantry army. As for focuses, we will be rushing down towards subjugate the warlords, which means we'll need to take 1, 2, 3, 4 focuses. Our timings will be tight. We have just about enough time to get ourselves an extra research slot by going for expand the Academia Sinica before the war starts, and get military affairs commission finished just as the Japanese finish their Marco Polo incident, which would bring us very close to army reform, 70 days off from being able to start work on removing our worst penalty, the army corruption. Now, with all this set up, it's time to forge ahead and lead China to greatness and ourselves to some achievements. So while we are rushing down the warlords, one of the places I like to park my army, meanwhile, is on the Guangxi border, because out of all the warlords, I find these to be the most frequent to refuse subjugation. Now, this is not a given, this changes every playthrough, but out of all the dozens of playthroughs I've done in preparation of this guide, I find that Guangxi is the most likely to refuse. If they don't, doesn't matter. The other ones are much easier to subjugate. If you get Guangxi under your boot, that's nice. Don't forget to assign them with a field marshal. I like picking the attack guy here. Even though he's 1 level lower, he has some great stats, and he doesn't suffer from the division recovery rate penalty that this guy does. So he's my go-to guy. We can also take our Air Force, get them ready and trained up. Make sure they're in the area to support our army. The quicker we have this finished, the better. Set them to air superiority and close air support in southern China. Maybe increase their limit, because we will be producing new planes. They can join the front lines immediately. And our navy, these will not be used for most of the game, so just get them out of harm's way and park them somewhere safe. One more thing I forgot is to simply build convoys. Ditch the cruiser you were constructing earlier, just get rid of it, make convoys. Always gonna need more convoys eventually. With the Type 24 completed, switch this research line over to electronic engineering so we can get a radio by the time we fight the warlords, and switch over our production. Our first investment of political power will be the silent workhorse. That's a no-brainer, an additional 15% power gain. There we go. We have subjugated the warlords, or at least some. Best case scenario, 1 or 2 warlords refuse, we crush them, and we net ourselves some army experience along the way. Worst case scenario, if only 1 or no warlords accept, it may be better to call it a day and restart at this point. Fighting the warlords is a piece of cake, but our timings would be too tight to completely consolidate China before the Japanese attack. Now, if you're gonna have to fight Guangxi, unlike this playthrough, you just need to line up all your troops on the border. You outnumber them. Use your infantry to pin down their divisions, while your cavalry and unimpeded infantry divisions rush to victory points and encircle troops. You should be able to defeat the Guangxi clique within days. Same goes for Yunnan and the other warlords. Depends. They're all easier than Guangxi though. Our only constraint here is time. So if we have to fight all of them or 3 of them, we won't have the time to beat both the warlords and the communists before we need to dig in before the Japanese onslaught arrives. And in the unlikely case that all the warlords submit, well, happy days I suppose. We'll actually be a little bit weaker for a while because we can't use their industry, but we can use their troops to shore up our lines and just integrate them after the war is won. If you do need to go to war with Guangxi and or Yunnan, do not annex them outright. Take their valuable provinces and leave them as a one province subject so you can integrate them later for the achievement, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Now let's see who we have here. So we have Ma Bufang, Li Zongren, and the other 3 have refused. Luckily for us, those are 3 very weak ones. So we are going to set ourselves to subjugating them, and then it's on to deal with the communists. Our second batch of political power will be invested in a military theorist, get ourselves a little bit of army experience, but more importantly, a speed boost to our land doctrine research, so we will have those defensive bonuses ready by the time the Japanese come knocking. Now, when fighting the warlords, it's important to, first of all, take the time down, speed it down a little bit so we have more control, and use divisions on the border that are in contact with an enemy to pin them down on the border, and all of your other units should just be pushing in as quickly as possible to make surrounds and encircle the enemy divisions, weakening them significantly. Some manual control is better than what the AI can manage in most cases. To supplement our army, we can make use of some of our vassals' divisions to make these wars pass quickly. With our radio done, let's start on support weapons 1. Give our troops a little edge. That is Shaanxi dealt with in about 30 days. You can just safely take all of their land. And Yunnan also out of the picture. Now for Yunnan, I suggest taking their southern province because it has some tungsten, and then just puppeting them. So you can still integrate them for the achievement. And the army that was freed up can now also safely sit on the border with the commies. Now if you're still finishing up one of the weaker warlords, and you notice the time to wipe out the communist is drawing near, make sure you have the troops you can spare on the border with the communists, and get your cavalry assigned there as well. Find a gap in the lines. This early in the game, the communists shouldn't have enough troops to man their front lines. So we can pin all their infantry divisions by attacking them with our own troops, and rush our cavalry through the gaps towards Yan'an, capitulating them quickly. And with anti-communism finished, we can take the war to the communists and wipe them out. Consider redeploying your air force there to help out a little bit, and wait for all your troops to get in position. Meanwhile, on to our next focus, Unified Industrial Planning, giving us access to expand the agnAQ Sinica. As you can see, I'm using my infantry to keep their infantry pinned down, while my cavalry will snake through. Xinjiang has capitulated, another irrelevant country, just take all of their states. And that takes the communists out of the equation, take their stuff, take their land, and now we wait for the Japanese to make their move. Now with China well under control, we now turn our efforts to preparing for the Japanese. We'll work on the focus Unified Industrial Planning, and after that we'll expand the agnAQ Sinica, giving us an extra research slot in this short period of peace. We'll also set up our army to take the brunt of the Japanese assault. This large 24 division army will take the Shaanxi front, and this smaller army here, comprised of our less experienced garrison divisions and the cavalry will be switched over to the standard infantry template, and they will guard the front line here near Beijing. We will not accept one step back, mostly because this airport here is our key to victory. Through it, we are able to secure air superiority over northern China, and we have the ability to use our bombers effectively, while the Japanese are severely hampered because there are no other airports nearby. Now, the 24 Division Army of garrison troops will be set to guarding our ports. Simply deploy 2 of them with a fallback order on every port we have, and that should prevent the Japanese from outright taking ports by directly assaulting them. And we have exactly enough troops to garrison every one of our ports. Now, any additional units we'll be training, we will be prioritizing on the Beijing army. It's the smallest and it will need a lot of troops. Something else we can do is request forces from our subjects and use those troops to assist in guarding our ports. 24 should do, it's a nice number. Take these along with the port guards, give them a different field marshal. I like to pick the defensive guy for this because they will be defending mostly. And you're going to be assigning these near Qingdao and the other ports to the north here on the peninsula of Shandong, and the other half of them will be near Shanghai, garrisoning the tiles next to the actual port of Shanghai and the city of Suzhou. This is where the Japanese like to land most of their divisions. With those units in place, we should be able to keep the Japanese naval invasions in check. With our support weapons done, let's work on our basic industry so we can keep up with our vast need for guns. And in preparation of the Japanese, we can take the infantry expert. I suggest not going for partial mobilization, but instead saving up political power. So by the time the Japanese do attack, you can immediately switch over to war economy. So I'm gonna take the infantry expert. Don't forget to take our Air Force, send them to northern China, and get them in position. And with the Academica Sinica done, you can see that Japan is justifying against us. That means they're working on their Marco Polo focus, and we will go for the Military Affairs Commission, getting us one step away from army reform and just that much closer to the army reform decisions that will make our army less than wet tissue paper. And with the extra research slot available, we are going to pour that energy into our industry. As for our industry, I suggest going for dispersed. It's simply the best considering how much construction we're still going to be doing. And in the current build of the game, it just beats concentrated hands down. And with that, we have the Marco Polo bridge incident. We have reached the breaking point, and now that the war will soon begin, we will take our speed way down. We can hold this line and our shoreline, but we will have to play it slowly and methodically. So micromanagement is mandatory to ensure we don't crumble right away. As for our next national focus, let's go for army reform. Get ready to get rid of that horrible penalty. And with that war declaration from Japan, we can use our saved up political power to switch right into war economy. Now this bit will be very slow and very methodical. We can hold this line. You'll see we can hold this line, not one step back for the Chinese. As you can see, we're already repelling several naval invasions because our troops are set up in the area that the AI will favor the most. Now, as for micromanagement, what you're going to be doing is sending units to reinforce fronts that are losing and pulling them away from fronts that are stable. As for research, let's keep it in industry for now, reinforce that. If you notice combat isn't exactly going your way and you're not sure if you're going to be in time to reinforce, it's also a good idea to make use of the last stand. It just gives you a nice defensive bonus. We are taking a brutal punishing, but for now our lines are holding and the Japanese haven't taken a single step on Chinese soil. These red bubbles, just nothing that we can't fix with a little micromanagement. You notice you're having a hard time holding some lines. What you can do is make a fallback line comprised of units of lower quality, mostly things you take from your subjects, and set a fallback line behind your front line and cycle those troops in and out of combat to reinforce where needed. A good upgrade for your generals is going to be Ambusher, which increases maximum entrenchment. With army reform done, we can work towards price controls and get rid of our low inflation, get our industry pumping, and we now have access to the army reform decisions, which will finally help us get rid of our terrible penalties, making our troops that much better. In 90 days, the first chunk is going to get removed and we'll be just that little bit stronger. And we're going to pour much of our political power into improving our army, get ourselves an army logistics expert, less division attrition. Also keep an eye on your shoreline. Be sure to mop up these small invasion forces that drop outside of your concentrated area to make sure that you don't get cut off and that the AI starts doing weird things like trying to move supplies or troops over water, which is going to end in a very bad time considering the Japanese Navy. Now with our little stockpile of anti-air and the nice army experience income from the constant fighting, now might also be a good idea to add some support anti-air to our units. If you're running out of fuel, you can trade about 2 factories worth with the Soviet Union, and you should not come into any problems regarding civilian factories. You have quite a few by now. 15 factories on infantry equipment should be enough for now. Let's tack on 3 more on towed anti-air to ensure a steady supply for our army. You can see here, we just keep repelling these naval invasions. With our troops in a good position, there's no way they're going to make any significant gains here. And to the north, our lines are holding. We still haven't taken one step back just by cycling units in and out of combat as organization drops. And in the air as well, we enjoy air superiority and our troops are bombing the hell out of the Japanese. Keep working on that army reform until that penalty is all gone. Now that we're caught up on industry, let's focus on improving the fighting capabilities of our troops. There we go, prepared defense is done. Next we're gonna go for Grand Assault, giving us some more attack and breakthrough, but first off, infantry equipment. Improve the support weapons to make sure we can actually hold this line long enough before we start considering a major counterattack. And some more political power. A good idea is to invest in the air superiority genius, give our planes that much more of an edge. The air is what is keeping us in the fight right now. With our spare army experience, consider expanding our infantry divisions somewhat. Get them closer to 20 with. Foreign investors is our next target. We're going to invite the British, because unlike the French, they don't capitulate immediately. We'll go down Burma Road, Lido Road, and let's pick up some aircraft along the way. Planes are good, as we've seen. They're keeping us in this fight. And considering we're pretty much caught up in the industry department, as well as the infantry equipment department, let's start putting some effort towards our aircraft, the Camco Hawk. And because we'll need so many guns to outfit our newly expanded divisions, let's put another 5 factories on infantry equipment. There we go. Let's head for British cooperation, leading us down to the Burma Road. And since we're all caught up on infantry equipment, let's also improve our bombers. With air infantry equipment wrapped up and industry caught up, you have work on the planes being done, so let's put some more effort into the electronics department, get that research speed up. You'll notice after the initial very hectic year, the fronts have stabilized considerably. We can play at a higher speed as well. Just have to keep an eye out for those red bubbles and reinforce and act quickly when needed. But from this point onwards, it's just a matter of building up strength for our final and decisive counter push and get the Japanese off the mainland. And some more political power to invest. Get a chief of the army. We could get defense genius. However, I don't feel that at this point we will need additional defense. We are quite well equipped in that area already. Army offense may be a little bit too soon as of yet, but division organization is always nice to have, so we'll take division organization. And let's get our final stage of army reform in as well. Once this one's done, we will have no more negative modifiers on our troops. British Corporation done. Let's get the Burma Road, boys. There we go, the Camco Hawk is finished. Now, let's upgrade our fighter and immediately make a good variant out of it. We're using this one for quite a while. Now, considering we're almost caught up on guns, 20 factories should be enough for that, but anything new towards our fighters and afterwards our bombers, get our air force up. And with Burma Road done, we now have access to construction battalions, giving us another maximum entrenchment bonus of 5 and leading to some faster engineers. More political power, maybe it's time to give the air force some love here. Let's put them on ground support. Now that we're all caught up on infantry equipment and industry, and the engineering is being worked on, maybe it's time to consider getting ourselves some support companies, so we can get maintenance companies and steal some Japanese stuff instead. With the construction battalions under our belt, let's also send a mission to the US, netting us more fighters when you complete fighter purchases and allowing us to continue down this tree towards Leader Road. And remember to also improve their opinion of us, otherwise we'll have to do that later. Might as well do it now. Support equipment done. Let's get ourselves some engineers, they're quick to research. And let's also start producing some of this support equipment. Let's dial back the guns a bit and start investing in support equipment. Mission of the US over. Let's get fighter purchases, netting us fighters from both the UK and the US. Remember to check your relations with both Britain and the US. Make sure it stays over 75 or your focus will cancel. So if you feel you're gonna drop below it, just improve relations. Make sure you don't waste any time. With our engineer companies done, let's get back to the industry tree. Now, political power. At this point, it's pretty much up to you what you prefer. There is no best direction to choose. I just like the financial expert. Fewer consumer goods factories means more factories building military factories. With our fighter purchase in, let's head down to Camco, giving us an aircraft designer, but also unlocking the rest of this tree. We're working on industry now, but it could be a good idea to improve our weapons. We will be taking the fight to the Japanese soon, after all. Now, with the Grand Assault done, we can pick a side of the doctrine tree to follow. I like going with infiltration because it boosts our basic infantry. It reduces our supply consumption, which is pretty great. And all the way down here, we have a recon bonus and a reinforcement rate bonus. Those are also okay. It's no superior firepower doctrine or even mobile warfare doctrine, but considering the effort we have to put in to hold this line in the first part, it's a good tree to continue in. And with Camco under our belt, we can pick up a nice ahead of time penalty bonus for our next fighter. More political power here. Now, we could keep taking advisors and aircraft designers here, but I think we might be better off starting the integration of some of our puppets. So we're gonna start with integrating the Guangxi army and keep working on that industry. And with that, let's head over to hiring a Shano. More research being completed, let's get ourselves some artillery and keep integrating the Guangxi. And with Shano hired, we can now get the hump, and that will lead us towards the Leader Road, and eventually we can renegotiate the unequal treaties, removing the national spirit of the Nine Powers Treaty, which puts us back in control of our own stuff. And with the hump done, we can work on a Leader Road, giving us another military factory. Nice. Now, you'll notice in Europe, the Second World War has kicked off, which means France is about to evaporate. That would leave the Vietnamese area, currently under French control, to be snatched up by Japan if they so choose. So we must be prepared for that. Request some forces from our puppet, a nice full army, 24 divisions, and just line those up on the French border. Gonna drive these right into Vietnam if they get any funny ideas. You'll see with France at war, suddenly our imports require convoys. Rather not work with that, so let's stop all trade with the French and start importing them from elsewhere, like the Soviet Union. They are now our new best friends. Now, with our army considerably expanded and this border very well garrisoned, now's the time to start making a few probing attacks outward. we have renegotiated the unequal treaties. We can use our next batch of political power to turn from free trade to something a little more reasonable, like export focus or even limited exports. And as for our national focuses, at this point it's pretty much up to you which way you want to go. Maybe down here to improve our odds when fighting the Japanese a little more. But at this point it doesn't matter anymore. You are strong enough that you can take any direction you want.
Yeah, we're eating Japan alive at this point. There's no coming back from this for them. Also a good idea to start integrating Yunnan for our achievement.
A few moments later.
Oh yeah, we have broken the back of the Japanese. They have almost nothing left in just Korea here. Look at the casualties. Almost 2 million Japanese casualties and only around 600,000 Chinamen lost. I'd say this is going swimmingly.
A few moments later.
There we go. Japan has offered us peace. This is the point where we have to accept the Japanese surrender. We will need to if we want to get our achievement Awake and Angry. So we are going to accept our victory. We can always annex Korea later. They won't be guaranteed by anyone. So at this point you have a massive China. You just need to integrate your warlord vassals if you still have some left. And that should be enough to net you Awake and Angry. Once you integrate Yunnan and Guangxi, you will get the Romance of the Three Kingdoms achievement as well. You should not require the French territory in Huangzhou 1 you should not need Macau, and you also should not need Hong Kong for awake and angry. However, if on your version of the game they are required, or if I am misremembering, which is entirely possible, it's simply a matter of joining the Axis and taking these territories, and then using your massive amount of manpower and gigantic industry to sweep away the Allies. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe for more of these guides, and let me know in the comments what other countries and achievements you would like to see done. This has been me, Bittersteel, on my China guide. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.